and early conditioning. So we're going to just talk about how early patterns in life, your attachment patterns, life experiences, family dynamics, how they help, establish core beliefs.
For sure. I got a great example of this. 2003, I had an opportunity to go overseas,
Okay.
and I went to Ukraine, and I had to raise money to go, and I went to my family members, and I was like, I really want to go on this trip. And they're like, where are you going? I said, but I'm gonna need you guys' support. They're like, sure, we'll support you. And they said, well, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Ukraine. And I was like, well, where's Ukraine? I was like, in Russia. And they were, they said to me, they looked at me and it was like, black people don't go to Russia. And they had this thing. I mean, I had all kinds of crazy, we don't fly, we don't go to Russia, we don't go to the mountains, we don't go to snow, we don't do these and these core beliefs that I realized had limited us. They had scared me. I was almost not going to go on the trip. But I decided I still was going to go. Some of them funded it. Some of them says we're not going to fund your demise, and so I had to find funding elsewhere. But I was determined. I went. I had a great time. I met some of the coolest people. Saw some great art. Great history. Learned their language. Even had a funny experience on a ski slope. I went I went skiing, and the translator told me I was going down a bunny slope, and I'm going down a triple black diamond. So tell me how that went. It took me 6 hours to get up and down,
Oh gosh.
or down and up. But yes, cultural biases. We have cultural biases. Talk to me about that.
Look at what's one of the main ones regarding counseling. Black folks don't go to counseling.
Yes.
We pray.
Yes.
We're going to pray through it.
Very
God's going
much
to
so.
deliver.
Very much so. So there's a lot of times we have our culture has produced things that don't serve us well.
Right.
And it may have happened for a reason. Maybe there was a time in history where we had to be really quiet and private about our
Right.
stuff
Right.
because we could really get killed or hurt. So maybe that idea of we don't share our pain and our problems with someone just kind of trickled down, and that damage, we call that historical trauma.
Trauma, yeah, or generational.
Yeah, generational trauma, and it just gets passed down, and we don't know why we're doing it.
Right.
How do one discover? How does one discover this, what their generational biases are, and whether they're good or bad? Because a lot of time we're blind to it. We don't know.
But I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about last week and the week before, when things no longer serve you well. Or
Ooh,
sometimes
I like that.
it's exposure to other people's experiences. You can see someone who did something, because had you not been exposed to the possibility of a trip to Ukraine, you never would have known. We don't know what we don't know.
Right.
So,
So does what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do we go and get curious about things we don't know, or do we evaluate what hasn't helped us, or what is helping us or not helping us?
it can be both. It kind of depends on the person. But if you don't know what you don't know that you need to look deeper,
Right.
right? It's exposure. It's going outside our comfort zone. It's being around people, ideas, um, values that don't necessarily match ours. Kind of looking and not only looking at people who look like us, but people who don't look like us.
Exactly. I have several podcasts that I am trying to accomplish, And in one of them, we talk about some of the um, traditions that different cultures have. And the question is kind of asked, how did these different traditions come about? And a lot of them really just depend on their environmental situation.
Right.
So if I'm up north and I live in a cold climate, I may have traditions that keep me warm, keep me safe. I may have a closer bubble. There's a word for it, I can't think of it right now, but my bubble may be closer. Proximity to people may be closer because we're used to staying warm by being around each other versus a climate that maybe is hot and you're like, please stay away. You are burning up. Please stay away from me. You're in my bubble. And I think our environment really can play a part in shaping some of the traditions that we create.
Well, I mean, you talked about, how we know. How do you know if this is something you need to kind of challenge? But and that's the hard thing, right? Because core beliefs are those things that we've held so close. We grew up believing,
Yeah.
like we don't trust people.
Yes.
Or you can have sometimes black people, we don't trust white people. White people
Yes.
say you can't trust black people.
Right.
Those things, and you just don't know. If you don't get outside that, if you don't get around people who think differently and can teach you differently and show you differently, it's kind of hard to ever challenge those beliefs.
Right. And then you have environmental factors that keep those narratives going. You have environmental factors that make it necessary. Just like in our political climate, it's almost as if we're pitted towards each other. One
Against each
group
other, yeah.
believes, hey, we need to focus on this, and another group believes they need to focus on that, and then they are pit between each other, and it ends up turning into a cultural war, a race war, a whatever type war where we stay divided.
And we could learn so much from each other if we were just to sit and have a conversation.
So if I'm trying to discover my why, if I'm trying to remove limits like um, these biases, cultural biases, um, and I'm not aware of them consciously, what can I do to awaken my awareness? What can I do to awaken my need to change?
And that's a tough question. I don't know unless you feel uncomfortable. Sometimes you start to feel uncomfortable with the thing. You kind of start to feel like, wait a minute, that's not right.
So how do you make it? I love that. How do you make yourself uncomfortable? Because the majority of our time is spent trying to get comfortable. We want to become. We focus. We run. We drive towards comfort.
One of the things that I do, um, it. I mean, I was in the military, but we used to have to go to training, and even after, when we would have training activities, I would always go sit at a table of people who did not look like me
Yeah.
because we self segregate so often.
Hmm.
I would just purposely go, and then it would turn out that some of the people who look like me would think that I was purposely trying not to be with them or like them, but that wasn't the case. It's just that I don't like the self segregation. People just sit with people who look like them. So I would purposely, and it might make someone uncomfortable, but I purposely
Hmm.
would do that. Go sit at a table full of people who were not like me.
Right. And I think that if I was to put that in a big umbrella, we must challenge ourselves on a constant basis. What I'm hearing is we should challenge ourselves to grow. I think the need to adjust and to adapt and to make those changes would come if we challenged ourselves to evolve to greater are better people.
And get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Oh, so okay, man. So this is why the why is so important. The why is important. If you want to understand your why, you must first want to grow. You can't get to your why unless you're ready for growth, unless you're willing and driven to grow.
Some people are comfortable. Some people are complacent. But people who are complacent are not likely to want to go on this journey.
So, but see, this is where it gets tricky because even the term finding your why seems like I want to find what I need to do so I can stop looking for it. Right? You know, it's like find your why so I can hurry up and find it and I can chill out and I can stop stressing about it and I know what I'm supposed to do and not just focus on that. But in reality, you'll never find your why that way.
But there are going to be those who are not okay with where they are.
Sure.
It's going to be this is not going to be something sought out by people who like where they are, who don't
Right.
want to change, who don't want to grow. And when we said finding your why, remember we talked about why certain patterns keep showing up in my life. Why do I keep ending up with the same kind of person? Why do I not have friends who value me as much as I value them? Why am I always broke? Why am I always at a job where I'm unhappy? Those are the kinds of whys. And so for those things, it's only going to be those people who are interested in truly,
Tired of being tired.
right, right.
Tired of being tired. Okay, so cultural differences we know can be a culprit to keep us from our why. It can cause us to become dysfunctional in our why. We need to now kind of start the process of reshaping our cultural. Okay, so so if we're going to reshape our cultural biases to something better, what would we call it? Instead of being a bias, we need to have cultural acceptance or understanding.
Or you could seek cultural understanding.
Okay, but that can be scary because there's some people I don't agree with culturally to my core. Like, you know, even as a religious man, there's some people who I don't agree with on a spiritual level, on
And
a
you don't have to.
moral level.
You don't have to.
But and I get this, but you know, you hear stuff like Bobby Holding, you become changed. There's certain things I don't want to understand. And I'm speaking as if, you know, I'm a layman, you know, I'm someone that, you know, just your every average day Joe. You know, in my heart, like there's certain things I just don't want to understand. I don't want to understand why you do what you do, because I don't want to accept it. And so
But
I keep my biases strong and in place because I don't want to accept a different opinion of something. I don't want you to take me off my course.
and you're being devil's advocate.
I'm being
So
devil's
I'm
guy. I'm being devil's
and
advocate,
so
but there's a lot of people who feel that way.
there certainly are a lot of people who
They
feel
might
that
not
way.
even admit
And that's
it.
what keeps us at odds. That's what keeps us at odds.
I get it, but what
So
do we do about it?
so well, if there's someone who feels that way, then I don't know how we change them. But if you seek understanding, your understanding does not have to bring you around to their beliefs, but it can just give you someone else's perspective.
So I remember I partnered with Marshall County when I was first in the field. I was working for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Shout out to Big Brothers Big Sisters. I started a program site in Marshall County, and me and the judge of that county, Judge Hawk. So if you ever see this, what's up, Judge? Miss you, man. He was really, really cool. By the way, culturally, he was this tall white guy who was like the coolest guy you would ever get to meet. real down to earth judge. But we went to so what he did for us to get into the community is we went to all the churches. We beat the ground. We went to every church in Marshall County. He was talking about the problems they were having with substance abuse,
Mhm.
and I was talking about big brothers, big sisters, kind of a
Okay.
one-two punch. Here's the problems. Here's a solution. Um, and I remember kind of going to all of these different places, and everyone was excited about the possibilities, but it was hard to get people to move.
Mhm.
It was hard to get people to get out of their comfort zone. Like idealistic, yeah, we were like, man, yeah, that makes sense. But it's hard to get people to get out of their comfort zone because it's dangerous. Like people don't want to rub shoulders. It's like I don't want to rub shoulders with criminals because I might become a criminal. I've seen it. Okay, I'll give you a prime example. Tell me you haven't seen this. So I went to a religious university.
Okay.
All right, and so in my undergrad, and so I remember you see these young up and coming pastors, right? They're like, we're gonna save some souls, and so if we're gonna save souls, we need to go where the souls that need saving hang out. We're going to the club. You know where I'm about to go with this. And we're gonna put flyers on their cars. We're gonna put at the club. They're gonna come out, and we're gonna have Jesus loves you on the cars. All right, and they did that for a couple of weeks. Religiously every Saturday night, putting flyers on the cars. That ain't good enough. You know what? We got to make them feel uncomfortable. We're gonna go stand by the door, and while they paying their ticket, they're gonna also get a flyer that Jesus loves them. And so they sitting at the door handing flyers out. A couple of weeks go by. Next, we gotta do something different. We need to go in the club, and we need to be passing out flyers. Next thing you know, man, the pastors are dancing in the club. You know,
You're
people
meeting
are
them where
afraid
they
of that.
are.
No, I ain't talking about me. No, I'm talking about joining them. No, no flyers are in hand. There was no flyers in hand. It was.
They were just in the
I'm
club.
on the dance floor showing you I can two step with the best of them. And I know it's a silly story, but it's true. I think a lot of people are afraid that and if I'm being honest, I'm not strong enough. I'm not strong enough to explore things and it not change me. By beholding, you become changed.
By beholding, you become changed.
By beholding, you become changed.
That may be true for some, but not for all.
Okay, so let's do some psychology behind that. Power of influence. You ever heard of that? The influential circles.
Tell me
Okay,
more.
so there's basically three circles of influence.
Hmm.
You have your outer ring, which is kind of like people you're aware of that you may know them, but they have very little impact
Okay.
on your influence, right? And then you have your second ring. This would be your close friends, people you can identify, people you know their story, you know a little bit about their life. They know your name, you know their name, and they have a medium impact on you.
Okay.
And then you have the third level, your inner level, which is these are people who see you on a regular basis, day to day. They relate to you well. Y'all have a lot of commonalities. You depend on their opinions. They depend on yours, and they have the most influence on you.
Okay.
Now, here's the key though, it's not necessarily a power structure of, oh, I have authority over you or anything like that. It's really proximity. The closer, the more time someone spends with you, the more influence they have over you. It doesn't have to do with age differences. It doesn't have to do with social economic status. It doesn't have to do with your the what the person's titles are. The closer you are, someone the more influence they have over you, and you hear it because we say things like "birds of a feather."
Flock together.
Yeah, don't be a pigeon, be a
I don't know that one.
eagle. You can fly, soar with eagles, or you can chill with the buzzards or the chickens. I mean, we know
Where
it's
did you
true.
grow up?
Man, I grew up in the South. Man, we had so many sayings. It's ridiculous. But
I'm gonna
we
agree with you.
know. Here's the thing: we know that you can be influenced with proximity. How do I, who has set up all of these cultural biases, these cultural defenses. We don't even call them bias. Let's not even call them biases because that's giving a negative connotation. But we've developed cultural defenses to protect us, our moral defenses to protect us from the world.
And from things we don't want to become or things we don't want to do.
Right. And every culture, every society has them. That's how you can identify almost a society from another, is by their differences, their biases.
I see where you're going. I see where
So-
you are.
But we know it limits our development of our why because our why is structured in a box. And we know that we can't be subjected to that. So how do I, as an individual that wants to discover my why, wants to bypass my box, wants to bypass these ropes that they put up, not get negatively influenced or thrown off my path?
If we could somehow get the message out and little tidbits, when we talk about the why, what patterns do you notice from your upbringing that still show up today? Do you notice a difference in how you react to them today or how relevant they are today versus how relevant they were when you were growing up? Do you notice any changes? Do you notice differences in how you feel about certain things? Do you now think that, oh, wait, you can't trust people? Oh, wait, we can do things differently. Somehow, get say something that might resonate with someone.
I hear you. It doesn't quite address the fear of being influenced. Because I think if we could bypass that, like it's almost so I get a chance to rub shoulders with different groups of people.
Mhm.
White, black, Puerto Rican, Mexican, foreigners, all different types of walks of life. And what I've learned, I always say this: we all have belly buttons.
Mm-hmm.
We all have belly buttons. We all struggle with the same things. And so I'm like, how do we get people to see that I need what you have and you need what I have? How do we get people to see that?
Well, you talk about the fear, and a lot of times fear comes from the unknown, or it comes from what we think we know. We may know wrong. So if you fear a group of people because of something that you see that they do, maybe you need to learn more about their motivation. I know, one of the common lessons they talk about in when you're, going to school to be a counselor, as is does it change when you look at someone who's stealing to feed his or her family,
Right.
or someone who they see a weakness and they're just going to exploit it? Like when there's natural disasters and people are looting just for themselves. They don't have a family. They're taken care of. They just see the opportunity and they're just gonna go get a TV because the window's broken and no one's gonna make them pay for it. But
Mob mentality.
yes, that mob
Right.
mentality. But like I said, is that a difference? Is the motivation? Is their motivation going to change how you look at that person? If I stole for a good cause, I stole because my children are at home and I don't have money to feed them and they're hungry, they're starving. So I went in the store and I stole for that reason. I didn't take more than I needed. I took enough to feed my family versus I stole just because.
Motive does play a part. So I think I've learned this lesson. I think in my own personal experiences, something that I've realized that everybody has little bits of information. And so the drive for me, so I'm talking to those that actually want to discover their why. Not everybody's going to want to discover their why because there's a lot of work to it. But if you want to discover your why, one thing I've learned is that you can't be afraid to explore outside of your norms. You can't be afraid to explore outside of your norms. You have to look at and the way you don't get negatively influenced or taken off track is you have to keep your mission in mind. You got to keep your mission in
Your
mind
vision.
or your vision.
That's what we talked
I
about.
love it. Yes, you have to keep your vision in mind while you're exploring what's in front of you or different experiences that you're going through. And I'm trying to think of a great example culturally. Okay, I'll tell you of a time where I was counseling a guy, a white male who didn't really want his son to be counseling by me. So I was counseling his son. I was working at the mental health center, and so they just assign you people.
Mhm.
It's a random draw of the hat. Here you got a client. For the most part, especially with kids. And the father, when he recognized that his son got me, he was very unhappy about it, and he tried to change, but they had a policy. You have to give us a good reason. Is there a reason why? And other than him just not liking me for whatever reason, for no reason, just because of the color of my skin, it wasn't going to fly. And I didn't notice all at the time. I didn't even know he didn't like me. The way I found out he didn't like me is we had a nurse practitioner on file, on site, who prescribed medicine. And so they had to come see her once a month. And after one of their sessions, she told me, "Hey, be careful because the father don't like you." He made a comment that he would if he saw you out in the street, he would knock you out. I didn't take him serious. He was an older man. He couldn't hurt a fly, in my opinion. But he just had a lot of anger. And so by the time I heard this, we were already 2-3 months in, and his son was making changes. He wasn't getting in trouble at school. He was being more respectful at home, more polite or whatever. And so I went and I explored. I went to the father and I said, "Listen, it has come to my attention that you're having a problem with me and you don't really want your son being counseled by me." And I said, because at this point, I had asked him to come in a couple of times because a lot of the issues the son was having was a reflection of the father.
Okay.
And I was like, I have to bring you in. I need to bring you in because a lot of the problems he's having, I'm finding out they're stemming from you. And I want to bring you in, but he was very resistant. I said, we can't go any further if you're not going to be compliant. And I understand that you don't like me. The only thing I could think of is referring you to another therapist if that's going to help you come in so that you can work on the issues that's hurting your son. And he didn't do it because his son really, like, he looked at his son and his son was like, absolutely not. You know what I mean? And so, he was like, no. And I said, well, then you're going to have to talk with me about why you have a problem. And I said, I'm sitting down, I don't care. I don't care how uncomfortable you are. I don't care how comfortable because it's about your son. You're gonna have to explain to me why you are uncomfortable with me. And he couldn't really answer that question. And I says, well, if you like what I'm doing with your son, you need to suspend your attitude. And you need to come in because I need to help you so you can help your son. And it did. The next 3, 6 months, we ended up discharging because they were at a really good place.
Mhm.
And you know what he told me before he left? He says, "I'm sorry, man. It's a cultural thing. It's just I was taught to not like you. But you like, you did one of those. You one of the good ones. There's a lot of good ones out there. You know what I
I've been
mean?
told I'm a good one too.
You're one of the
Yeah.
good ones. And so to me, I had to be willing to suspend my biases in order to get him to suspend his. I had to be comfortable with my mission, my vision. My vision was to get him to help his son. I had to be comfortable with that. But that was an uncomfortable situation.
I'm sure.
But what about,
But that's a good example of someone, first of all, not wanting to go into a space, not wanting his son to be in close proximity to you because of things that he was surely, taught growing up. And those things carried him into his adulthood. And that's an example of something that no longer serves him well because had he stuck with that belief, that core belief, his son may not have been helped.
right?
His son may not have improved.
Or he wouldn't have been able to improve.
So that's a
either.
perfect example of what we're talking about. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. He didn't know that someone who looked like you could possibly be any good for him or his family
So
or
we
do any good.
so we got to keep the vision in front of us. So as you explore, as you get out of your box, you got to keep the vision in front of you. What else do we need to be aware of when we're trying to overcome cultural bias? We're trying to identify what works for us and what doesn't work.
Let's see, vision, openness.
What do you mean
What
by openness? Openness.
openness to the process because you have to be open to change.
Yeah.
You have to be open to change. If you
Ooh, that's so scary. I'm
It-
I'm having like a small little panic attack thinking about it now. Open to change.
open to change.
Okay, so here's a change. Are you a Christian? Is that okay? Either way, let me ask you this question. So let's say you're a Christian and someone's like trying to tell you, I don't believe in Christianity.
Hmm.
Am I supposed to be open to that?
Yes.
Okay, no. Here's a better one. You
No,
believe? You
go,
believe?
no.
No, because I don't want to go there.
No, you already went. You
Chat.
already
I don't
went.
want to go there unless y'all go.
Uh,
Unless y'all get on the chat and start for asking questions. I'm not going.
I'm
Okay.
just saying.
Okay. You believe the Earth is round,
Uh-huh.
and I believe the Earth is flat.
Okay.
Do you really want to see where I'm coming from? I mean, okay. The answer is yes. But do you want to? Could you, or would you want to be influenced by me?
I'm very interested in seeing your perspective and how it is that despite years and countless methods of proving that wrong, you still believe that thing. I might be
It could be a
interested.
rabbit hole. You can go down. I mean, I know every question, every proof you can say. There's a flat Earth theorist who can prove against it. You're like, well, they've been out in space and they've seen around Earth, and it didn't have it wasn't stationary. Oh, they're lying to you. That was CGI. You know, I'm like, they will literally say that. Like, what about those,
Right.
what about those videos you can see where the astronauts in space and they can look out, they're gonna, oh, that's all movie theatrics. Or why is
And
the
some
moon and the
people are,
sun, why is the moon and the sun round but the earth flat? You can get something.
and some people are that deeply rooted in their beliefs, even though they've been proven wrong. So, some people you're never going to change, but I'd venture to say that most of those people aren't going to look for change either. They are comfortable in their ignorance and their misbelief.
And I'm with you. Like, I'm playing devil's advocate. I am with you. I'm with you. But there's got to be a certain protection that you have in place when you go out and explore. Or do you throw all that to the wind and just say, I'm looking for truth?
Are you looking for truth?
It's a good question. I'm looking for truth, but is there an absolute truth? Because everything seems to sound true. I've heard several different theories and they all sound true and they all have things to back it up. Like, it's not like someone's just bold-faced lying. It's hard to detect lies sometimes,
It can be difficult to
it's hard.
detect untruths.
Yeah.
So let's pull it back in some.
Okay.
Okay, so we're talking about, when we talk about discovering your why,
Mm-hmm.
today, this is the third session,
Right.
the third, area, and we're talking about core beliefs. And so generally those beliefs are things that we're taught growing up, the things that shape our values, our beliefs, our attitudes. And I think that those are not the things that we've kind of veered off to.
Well,
In a way,
we
because
have-
some of those things, yeah.
But what I'm saying is I think with me, if we're bringing it back home, our core beliefs can keep us from our why.
They can.
Our core beliefs can keep us from discovering ourselves and our whys. And so, how do we make sure our core belief isn't keeping us from succeeding?
There has to be a self-awareness.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm first of all, what is give me an example of a core belief?
A core belief: you can't. Nobody can be trusted.
Is that a core belief?
You have people who grow up, their families tell them you can't trust anyone. Don't trust anyone. You have people who grow up believing that someone who looks like you can't be who doesn't look like you cannot be trusted.
Okay.
Belief systems. We don't do counseling.
Right. Okay. So that's a core belief.
Yeah.
We don't do counseling, but you're trying to figure out who you are and what you want out of life.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't trust anyone. You can't. We don't trust no one, right?
Right.
We don't trust anyone, but I want to find out my why. And in order for me to do that, I have to seek guidance from other people. I can't trust you. How can I seek guidance? What should I do to seek guidance if I don't trust you? I need to in order to figure out who I am, but I don't trust nobody.
That's going to be stepping out of that comfort zone.
You have to modify
your beliefs.
That belief.
Suspend, if you will.
Well, I think you suspend while you're trying to understand other thought processes. You have to suspend it. But once you have gathered all the information, I think you turn it back on.
You might, though, but what you've understood, what you've come to learn may have changed that.
Right. And so when you turn it back on, you have to merge all the information you have, and you have to
Make an informed decision.
make an informed decision. Okay, so I got it. So okay, chat. I think we got the answer for this next one. So there's times where when we have core beliefs and we have certain things that we have in place, but they're keeping us from moving forward, they're keeping us from discovering our why. We may have to suspend those core beliefs for a moment and open up our minds to other possibilities to explore. And once we gather that data, then we measure it with our core belief. And if there are certain bits and pieces that we can take from that data, or if there's certain things we need to correct from our core belief, that's when we do it and then adopt the good while shaving off the bad. So I'm thinking, how will we do that with two different core beliefs? So let's say I have the core belief of people can't be trusted.
Mhm.
And let's say I have the core belief everyone needs to be trusted. Two extremes, right? You should trust everyone. You can't trust anyone.
I agree with you, no, I disagree with the second one though. Like,
Because that's a
because you
core
can't,
belief.
but and I would think that someone who is raised believing you can trust anyone has already been shown that that's not true, because you can't.
Okay.
Not everyone can be trusted, because if that's the case, all these emails I get from these Nigerian princes, I should be a millionaire by now.
Okay, so
And
then how
also
do
Target has a job for me, waiting for me. I got 3 texts today from somebody telling me that they had a job for me. So you can't trust that. I mean, that's been proven
but I
time
can
and
say
again.
that with the core belief of you can't trust nobody. There are people you have
The
to
reason
trust.
that can't be true is because you don't know everybody.
Not only that, but you trust people all the time.
You
You
trust people
you don't even met.
you trust people to follow the traffic laws when you get in your car.
Right. You trust
There's different levels and layers
right.
of trust.
You trust people to make sure your lights are turned on and
When
your
you've paid your
job is-
bill.
that
Correct.
you
You
trust-
trust that your job is going to pay you when you've done your job.
I trust my brakes are going to stop. You get what I trust whoever made my car that they did a good job
Absolutely.
making it and that it's going to hold together. So we have to trust just as much as we have to be protective of ourselves. But so it's not a black and white. There's a gray, and we have to figure out how to be pliable and
And
balanced.
use wisdom and
Wisdom. Okay.
and things we've learned. So knowledge and all of that.
Okay. I like that. I like that. I like that. So
And if you don't trust, one of the things I would say is find someone who is bound by that trust. Like if they don't abide by the trust that I'm supposed to be able to have in them, there are consequences, right? So as counselors, we cannot break trust except under confidentiality and except
Sure.
under certain circumstances. So things like that. So that might be a good place to start. Someone who, if they could lose their job or their license if they break my trust.
it's situational trust, verifiable trust. There's a lot of different types of trust that are out
Yeah.
there, and we can learn to operate in them. Where does going back to core beliefs, right?
Mhm.
Where does proof, proof in the pudding, where does proof come in to our core beliefs? There's a lot of things that we believe and we just take it at face value and never check it. Going back to, certain, when I was going to Ukraine and there were certain things, it was like, Black people don't do that. Or Black people don't go to counseling or whatever. Like, how do I find proof? How do I discover if what I'm told is my core belief?
And then that's the exception. So can you think of a time when you've known a Black person who went to counseling.
No,
There's-
cause they quiet about it. They ain't out there publicly saying. I mean, you didn't see any TV shows of Black people going to counseling. I don't
them
see it on
now.
TV or movies. You do? When? Where? Maybe not. It's not promoted. It still is not promoted that well in our community. Tell me when. Like I've seen plenty of shows
This is
where
us.
other races.
This is us.
Okay, that was a good one. Great example. This is us. I like that. I like that. Okay. Yes, but he grew up in a white family.
He's still Black.
But his influence, his environment was different. His environment was different. So yes, he was exposed to that. And I'm not saying that. First of all, as a Black counselor, I'm not saying Black people don't go to counseling.
Obviously.
They do.
And we
They're
see
more
them all the
particular,
time.
more quiet about it.
They may not tell everyone, but we see it.
Right.
You know, you and I see it every day.
For sure. 100%.
Whether they're shouting it from the mountaintops or not.
Right.
You know, I am a counselor in training. You're a counselor. You see Black clients every day. I see
All the
Black
time.
clients all the time.
For sure. So I guess with that part of our bias, we need more evidence. We need to be evidence-based. We need to ask ourselves, is this true?
And there are empirical studies you can look up. You can
We
look
can't be anecdotal.
specifically.
We
Yeah.
cannot be emotional. We have to see if there's evidence to back up what we don't believe or what we do believe. Okay. I think that is a good place to start, where we don't allow our core beliefs.
Mhm.
We don't allow our core beliefs to keep us from discovering our why, because this is a journey we're on. You know what I mean? This is a journey we're
It
on.
is.
And we don't want to be hindered on our journey. We don't want roadblocks to stop us from getting to our destination. Our cultural biases, our core beliefs can sometimes do that. And we need to be able to check those in place.
Yes, definitely.
All right. So what's one word of wisdom as we close this one out that we can give to the chat, to those out there?
Challenge your assumptions.
Challenge your assumptions. I love it. Challenge your assumptions. You know, don't assume anything. Verify. Make sure you've experienced it. Don't be afraid of being influenced, because you know that you're going to go back and measure the influences the information you received to your goals that you have set. Does this get me to my goals? And if they don't, you don't have to adopt it, but you don't want to miss out what you don't know because you was too afraid to explore.
100%.
All right. Once again, every Monday, 5:30 Central Time.
And next week.
Next week, what we doing
Next
next
week
week?
is emotional triggers and coping responses.
You don't want to miss that. Did you say that again for the people in the back?
Emotional triggers and coping responses.
Emotional triggers and coping responses. Man, this is what you need to know. You need to know about cultural triggers. Coping.
No. Emotional
triggers
and coping
responses. All right, we'll see you next week, Monday, 5:30 Central. Look forward to seeing all you guys. Talk to you then.
Bye.